This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
Your neighborhood just got cooler with Kroger Delivery's refrigerated trucks. Simply order groceries at the same great prices online as in-store, and we'll bring them to you fresh every time. And if that wasn't cool enough, you can now earn 4 times the fuel points after 4 with your digital coupon. Choose a next-day Kroger Delivery time slot for 4 p.m. or later on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Must deliver by February 4th. Restrictions apply. See Kroger.com for details.
We may live over 5,000 miles from Lincoln Financial Field, but what we lack in proximity, we make up for in film study. And each and every week, we'll be bringing you in-depth film previews from across the pond and the Sooner State. Welcome to On the Shane page. I am your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. And I am joined by BGN's own film guru, Jonny Page. Give him a follow at JohnnyPage9. Jonny, how are you doing this evening?
I thought you were going to say food guru for a second then. I was like, yep, new account, food reviews incoming. Yes, I'm good. If anyone hears I'm slightly croaky, sports has not been good this week, Shane, which is not a great omen for the Eagles, but I have 2 teams that I love very dearly, as many fans know. In fact, I've got my mug of tea as it stands, my Arsenal mug right now. Shout out to the Arseblog podcast. And they did not have a very good night last night, and I decided, despite being sick, to go and watch them. And it's cold here. It may not be cold compared to America, but it's like 0 degrees centigrade. I don't know what that means to you guys. Some of you, that's probably like summer. I don't know. I don't get American weather. But here, that's cold. So I sat there for 2 hours watching my team lose 2-0, making myself ill in the process, making myself lose 2 hours of sleep. And we play on Sunday as well. Arsenal we play at 3 o'clock this time. And then it's also a cup game. And then the Eagles play at 9:30. So there is a possibility that Sunday night, by the time I go to bed, both my teams are through to the next round, or both of them have been knocked out. So this Sunday is a very stressful day for me, and I'm already stressing about how badly it could go and how well it could go. But except for my slightly croaky voice and feeling slightly under the weather, which is all my own fault, I am good. It was quite nice to not have to grind the Eagles-Giants film too much this week. I don't know about you, but I'm convinced the Giants were like giving up on certain plays. There was a little bit of an inner tank going on there, in my opinion, but that's just maybe a hot take. I don't know if you thought the same when you were watching it. There were some plays when I was like, oh, I'm not sure the coaches are putting them in a position to win here, but there you go.
Yeah, I just get frustrated watching like poorly coached football, and I can't imagine being a Giants fan and having to watch that every week. The end of last season about ended me with some of the stupid things the Eagles were doing defensively, and you just watch the Giants film and it's like, hey, what if we played 12 yards off and immediately bailed at the snap and just let you throw out routes all day? What if we did that? That would be fun. So yeah, it was some pretty pathetic defense for sure.
Yeah, that's basically one of the plays I was on about. There was a 3rd down, wasn't there? Anyway, right. Do you want to explain what we're doing today? Long story short, you've put previewing Eagles Packers, so it's going to be mainly around the Packers. I sort of feel like I had the comment with people on Twitter, like, do you talk about the Giants at all? I'm like, well, realistically, no one's going to talk about the Giants after this game. We're not going to go back and do a podcast on the Giants game in 4 weeks or 2 weeks. So I feel like there's probably a couple of things to talk about, but we can do them very quickly. And then we'll get into the Packers. But yeah, there are still some things that are relevant. I don't think everything was pointless this week against the Giants. You could still see a few things. You could maybe find a few players. So should we start with the Eagles offense this week? Do you want to start with the greatest quarterback the world has ever seen, Tanner McKee, which my Bleeding Green article currently has, I think it was over 130 comments last time I looked, and I'm pretty sure half of them were arguing about how good Tanner McKee is. So Philadelphia loves a backup QB, man. We love a backup quarterback. So yeah, what did you see from the future Hall of Fame, future All-Pro Tanner McKee?
You asked if I wanted to explain what we were doing today, and I would love to explain what we're doing, but the fact is I'm not actually sure that I know. I have no idea how this show is going to turn out. So just, join along here for the ride, because we got no idea what we're doing. We are not a preview show, but we're going to end up doing more preview this week. But we can get to the Tanner McKee of it all first. And yeah, it's crazy. Like I was tweeting some of the all 22 clips, and I got comments from people that were like, be honest. Who do you think performs better with this offense? Tanner McKee or Jalen Hurts? And I'm like, well, obviously Jalen Hurts. Like, Tanner McKee is the third string quarterback. And I thought he had a good game, but I don't want to take away from his game, because I am like a Tanner McKee guy. And I have been from back like his first preseason in 2023. I've thought he's got really good arm talent. He's been a fun guy to watch, but the Giants were also just atrocious in what they were doing in this game. So some of the good from Tanner McKee, they got him on the move. And I think one of the bigger takeaways from this game, and I'm not going to have a lot of film clips I toss up on the screen today, but I did record a 30-minute Tanner McKee pass game review and posted it in the Patreon, because I'm a true sicko. Yeah, go check out the Patreon. I broke down 23 of his throws. So you can go check that out with all of the clips, but I'll talk about some broad things. One of the biggest takeaways is the Eagles utilized a lot of play action and a lot of rollouts in this game. And we've asked for Jalen Hurts to have that type of an offense for a long time. And I think now we have the definitive answer that Jalen Hurts does not like to turn his back on the defense and run play action in that way. And that's fine. Like, I think he would be good at that. There's reasons that you don't do that at times. And there's a pretty good example in the game of one of the issues with running that sort of a offense. And you get the Eagles in pistol, and McKee is going to turn his back to the defense and then bootleg right. And late in the snap count, you get, I think it's a safety that comes and rushes off the edge, and it's a free runner, and McKee boots right into him, and it kills the play. Like, that's not a good look. And when you have an offensive line that's as good as the Eagles is, there is some validity to just run a straight drop back passing game, because bootlegging, rolling the pocket out, that is inherently high risk, high reward. Sometimes you will negate bad protection by booting away from pressure. Sometimes you will negate what would have been good protection by just rolling into someone. And so you introduce a variance into it. And that's probably why the Eagles did it a lot in this game, playing an entire backup defensive line against Brian Burns and Kevon Thibodeau. And that may be part of why Jalen Hurts doesn't want to run that style of an offense, because he has such a good offensive line. And so, but whatever the reason is, I don't think you're ever really going to see that with the Eagles. Now that you've seen it with somebody else at quarterback, it becomes pretty clear to me it's a Jalen Hurts thing. Another thing that I thought you can take away from Tanner McKee's performance is, we've talked before about how you like to have a backup quarterback with the same skill set of your starting quarterback. And Tanner McKee is obviously not a mobile quarterback. He can't be effective in a run game like Jalen Hurts is. But as I watched him play, one thing that I did think is that he rips outbreaking routes to the boundary with the same sort of anticipation that Jalen Hurts does. And you can do some stuff with that when you already have a dominant running game. And so if you were forced into a situation where you had to put Tanner McKee in as a backup for 2 or 3 weeks next season, would you have to radically change the offense? And I do think the run game would have to change, but I think his ball handling is good enough to run RPOs, because again, an RPO does not have to have the quarterback threatening to keep the ball. You can add in some of the bootleg stuff that he likes, and then you can still have him throwing outside the numbers, which Jalen Hurts really loves to do. And so I thought there were some things that you could see, and I'll throw up one of the out routes here that he throws just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. But look at the anticipate. He's already separating to throw the ball. And I think it's Jahan Dotson hasn't even really started to break yet. And the ball's just on him. And so I thought he did a good job throwing with anticipation outside the numbers. I thought he had a few plays where he did a really good job navigating the pocket. And I thought there were some plays where he did a pretty bad job navigating the pocket. But, overall, I liked what I saw. I thought he was fun to watch. And I would like to see him be the Eagles quarterback too next year. I would like to see him be able to recoup something for Kenny Pickett if possible, and have McKee be QB2 next year.
Yeah, it's a proper throwback, isn't he? He's I've said this quite a lot, but I genuinely think he'd been a first round pick like 10 years ago. The BGN comments that were in the arguments this week, in the people were in their feelings, and there was lots of talk about how mobility is now massively overrated. And look at Jared Goff, and look at Matthew Stafford, and look at Brady and Manning. And it's like, trust me, you're talking to the guy who is the QB pocket guy. Like that was me. I was over Vic. I've always been a pocket quarterback guy. But just look around the league. The very, very best are pretty mobile. The guy in the comment, one of them actually said like non-mobile quarterbacks like a Burrow and Herbert. And I was like, oh, Burrow and Herbert are incredibly mobile in the pocket. Herbert is a freak athlete. So I think, and this one reason why I talk about this is for anyone like, can we trade him to be? I don't think a team is looking at Tanner McKee to start next year. I think he played exactly how I hoped he would play. He plays in time. He gets the ball out on time. He basically seems to make his mind up pre-snap, and that led to a couple of near interceptions because he clearly threw the ball very early. And I think he was trying to anticipate a little bit too much. I don't really have anything major against Tanner McKee. I'm not going to turn this into the Tanner McKee show. He was fine. He does a job. You obviously want to say something else. I'll just say one thing as well. Sorry, just really quickly before you finish. I just think when we talk about QB mobility, basically Tanner McKee runs the play as it's called, which is great when the play works. What teams want now these days is when the play doesn't work, your QB can still win. If you look at the stuff that the guys like Lamar and Josh Allen are doing, Mahomes is doing, I know they're the best of the best of the best, but that's what teams want. They would rather a Jaden Daniels and a Drake May. 5 years ago, Jaden Daniels would not go anywhere near Drake May. Like, I don't think there's even a debate 5-10 years ago. And Jaden Daniels has had an exceptionally good rookie season. I think there's more chance of teams looking at what Joe Milton, the Patriots backup, did this week and going, do you know what? There might be something there. And I'm not saying I agree with teams, by the way. I think there is absolutely a place for pocket passes. I'm not saying that's the right mentality. I just think modern NFL teams, the majority of them want someone with more mobility because they can create outside of structure. They can essentially make the coaches right when the coaches are wrong. And McKee will not do that for you. I think he's a perfectly adequate backup. I think he's a really, really good fit for this offense, weirdly, as the ways you outlined. I completely agree. The only thing we haven't seen him is throwing like down the field vertically, but we've seen back shoulder throws. So I have no problems at all with them keeping him around. In fact, I think that's much more likely because I don't think you're going to get a huge trade pick for him anyway. So before I give some other very, very quick thoughts on the offense, let's finish the very brief McKee discussion.
Yeah, the reason you should take everything with a grain of salt is a play like this. It's 3rd and 15. And so I've drawn where the first down marker is on the field, and the Giants are in cover.
Their tanking play.
Yeah, the Giants are in cover 2. And this is a first round pick from a year ago, Deontay Banks, at the boundary at the bottom of the screen. In cover 2, we need to carry the vertical route far enough for the safety to get there. It's 3rd and 15, right? This isn't fringe of field goal range. We can't give up 5 yards. I just want you to watch how far he retreats before he goes to the flat. He starts at the 30-yard line, and he goes all the way to the 32. Like, that's a cloud flat carrying a vertical route 2 yards on 3rd and 15. And, that's a good throw. Let's not take that away from McKee. It's a good anticipation throw. But the Giants' defense was also horrendous in this game. And so take all of the McKee things with a grain of salt. I love Tanner McKee. He had a great game. Let's remember that the Giants absolutely stink.
Yeah, they really, really stunk. I tell you what, I think even as we're talking about it, I feel like more and more, let's just breeze through this quickly. I was going to show a couple of clips, but I can't be bothered myself either. I'm on to the Packers. So what I'll do is I'll give you, and as Ken James would say, with the cheese, Connor commenting saying, do you think the under center with Tanner? We sort of touched on that start, Connor. You may not have been there, but yeah, I think the simple answer is number one, obviously Hurts isn't as comfortable. I don't think it's fair to say that Hurts hates it, but I think Hurts obviously is not as comfortable with doing that. And I also think there are positives and negatives of doing that. And Shane outlined quite well, like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I'm not as fussed about having a QB who doesn't like something. It's just if they outright don't do it, like that's the issue for me. I don't think Hurts is anti-play action or anything. I think we've seen the Eagles have a lot of success with play action. Some people would argue that a worse quarterback needs to rely on more stuff created like boot action, like play action. So you could argue that in some ways it shows the coaching staff maybe making things easier for McKee, but it depends on your individual preference. I'll run through a few things, Shane, from the offense. The only other things I noticed really, And to be honest, there wasn't a great deal. I was a little disappointed, but Tyler Steen struggled. I wasn't particularly impressed with him at left guard. There was a couple of snaps he had in pass protection that were pretty rough. Maybe just something to consider if the Eagles were just nailing him on as a start next week. Next season, if Becton goes, and that was a guarantee. Maybe they look at that film and think, we'll see. He was playing left guard, where he's never played that often. Other things, we've got to look at the receivers and running backs. Dallas Goedert was obviously the best player on the field, and I didn't think it was close. And it made me realize how much better Dallas Goedert is than Grant Calcaterra and EJ Jenkins. So if the Eagles are going to do anything this year and go all the way, I think Goddard's going to have to stay healthy, because that is a huge downgrade. Like, no offense to Calcaterra. I like Calcaterra. I think he can do some stuff well. But just seeing Dallas Goedert out there, you realize it's a different world. He's totally in a different league. Then we saw Dotson and Wilson. I thought Dotson looked a hell of a lot better than Johnny Wilson. And Johnny Wilson, I just don't see it with him on the outside. If you want to have a look at my thread, anyone listening, there's a play I've got of Johnny Wilson just running like a deep comeback, and there's just no juice, man. There's just nothing vertically. Like, the cornerback's not flipping his hips until about 15 yards down the field. I don't think he has the juice. I think he's a role player, big slot receiver in the red zone. And I thought Dotson was fine, but there was a couple of reps where Dotson still couldn't play through contact. And I think Dotson was really good when Giants gave him like 15 yards of cushion, which is sort of what I think Dotson is. And by the way, I'm not saying this to be negative. I'm just sort of saying what I see. And he had one quick slant where he couldn't bring it in under contact. Dotson dropped it. It wasn't really a drop, but he just doesn't really excel at the catch point. I thought Dotson was really good, but I also didn't watch this game going, why have we not been giving this guy 7 targets a game? This guy needs to take away targets from what we're doing already. I thought he played like you would hope that your very serviceable wide receiver 3 would play. I didn't think I saw anything particularly special. I think a lot of that was the Giants defense being pretty horrendous. Have you got one more thing you wanted to mention?
Oh, this is just an example of Dotson getting totally thrown off by
Yes, I don't even know if I posted that and commented on it, but as in if I put on my comments, but it was so obvious, wasn't it? It's a 3-level stretch route if you're listening, and Dotson is running the deepest route, and that deepest route's job is literally get downfield as quick as you can. And I think they run like a switch of a line of scrimmage, or does he come across in motion in this one? He's sort of like, he just can't get off contact, can he? Like, he just takes him 3 seconds to even get down the field, and Dallas Goedert's almost ahead of him.
It's never good when your clear out route is 5 yards behind the route it's creating space
that's
for.
Not really how deep and intermediate stuff should work, is it? That was pretty much me for the offense. I saw some good buzz about Will Shipley. I was like, he made 1 or 2 plays in space that I liked, and I didn't really see anything else. That was pretty much it for me in the offense. Anything you wanted to throw out there for the offense before we very quickly transition to the defense?
No, that's good for me on the offense. Let's go defense. What do you have on the defense?
I thought Bryce Huff was utterly hopeless for about 2 quarters, and then had a few near misses in the 3rd and 4th. But I am fully on the very concerned about the edge defenders. Bryce Huff was a concern. Didn't think he looked good. I thought the Eagles' starting defensive tackles looked awesome. I thought Jordan Davis in particular looked really, really good, which was nice to see. I thought the Eagles linebackers coach should be getting defensive coordinator interviews, because he has these guys playing extremely well. Oren Burks was everywhere, basically every snap. And I don't really know what to think about sort of the fact he had like 17 tackles or something absurd, I'm sure I saw. Jeremiah Trotter was Jeremiah Trotter, so in the right place, but not physically good enough to maybe complete the play. But that's something hopefully they can work on, because instinctively he's there. I thought Keely Ringo looked really good, and I always think Keely Ringo looks good, and it made me wonder about Darius Slay next year and whether Ringo's got a good chance of that outside corner position. And final takeaway from a defense is probably that I can't give up on Sidney Brown. Sidney Brown got a lot of criticism in this one because he was very reckless, and he came flying downhill and missed a horrendous tackle. And I think he nearly killed Isaiah Rodgers on a vertical shot. But man, watch that play. The range he shows. You can't tell me there's no coach in the world going, yeah, but come on. If you want to play a single high defense and you want a single high safety that can run sideline to sideline, there are not many that can do it that quick. So even though he's a little bit reckless, even though he's got a lot to do, I think there's definitely a package you can use Sidney Brown. And if you're playing a certain team that play a lot of, or you want to play a lot of single high against, or you want a safety that has a lot of range, maybe in a certain package on like 3rd and long or 4th and long and something, I think there is absolutely a role for Sidney Brown. That was pretty much it. I'm trying to think off the top of my head if there was anything else I commented on. I do not believe there was. Anything disagree, agree? Anything extra you wanted to add?
No, not really. I wonder what's going to happen with the Bryce Huff of it all, because
it wasn't good, was it?
I mean, no, it wasn't good. And he comes in and he's transitioning schemes and roles from rotational pass rusher to, just a different scheme in the Fangio scheme where he's got more run responsibilities, which he's terrible at, by the way. Being more of a full-time player, he starts slow. It felt like he started to ramp up a little bit. Still not what you need from him for what you paid for him. And then he gets injured, and now all of a sudden you're coming back. And I don't know, maybe with a full off season, something can happen with him. I believe when I looked at his contract, the Eagles can't save money, period, by letting him go this off season. So he's probably back next year. It actually costs some more money than it does to get rid of him than it does to keep him. So hopefully they can get something out of him, but I'm definitely concerned about that quite a bit. The only other thing I would note from this game is special teams wise. Jake Elliott missing a 39-yard field goal is really concerning. I'm at the point now that there isn't a distance that I feel comfortable relying on Jake Elliott from in a playoff game. And so I don't know. It feeds in. You should generally be more aggressive anyways.
That's
and
what I was
think
going to
the
say.
Eagles would be, but you get into a situation that it's like, hey, we're up by 4 and we could kick a field goal to go up a touchdown late in the game, but we just can't because we don't trust our kicker. Somebody pointed out in our Patreon Discord that it was after the miss that they put him back on kickoff duties. Maybe that's the answer. I know they originally made that switch because they were concerned about him getting hurt tackling with the new kickoff rules. Just put Jake Elliott in to do kickoffs and kick it out of the back of the end zone every time. I'm fine with surrendering starting field position at the 30 every time if it gets you to a place you feel more comfortable with Jake Elliott. But I am definitely concerned there.
Yeah, I was going to say something on the Bryce Huff thing. I think it was the first snap of the game, and the tight end just flattened him, and I was like, "Oh my goodness! It's not good, is it? It's not good." Yeah, I have a bold prediction that there's going to be a guy that will tweet during the playoffs when the Eagles go for it on fourth and they fail, and someone will tweet, and they just could have taken 3 points instead. And I'll be like, no, they couldn't, sadly, because that is a massive assumption. Before we move on to the Packers stuff, just really quickly, a couple of comments coming in. Matt saying a Fangio shows an edge is probably our round 1 draft pick. I think that's a very, very high possibility. And he asked everyone about, is Rodgers probably out of here? Ringo to slay air? I basically just assume yes, because I think the Eagles have probably got some big cap decisions to make. And as much as I'm okay with Isaiah Rodgers, you've got Ringo on your books for probably nothing, I'm guessing, next year, whereas you'd have to pay Rodgers. And I think Rodgers has done enough to maybe get a little bit of money elsewhere. So who knows? People talking about Brandon Graham as well. God, I would love Brandon Graham to be back whenever he's back. I think there are some rumors out there, aren't there? He's going to try and get back. My guess would be, if it is anything, it would have to be Super Bowl, because you obviously get the extra week off beforehand. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to give up on Huff yet. I did find some of the stuff, there were still people that seem to talk about him, his run defense, like it was never that bad. And I'm like, it's pretty rough. He's pretty much, in my opinion, unplayable on early downs, especially against the Packers, by the way, which we'll get to soon. I really don't want Bryce Huff near the Packers on early downs this week.
And right. And if you're unplayable on rundowns, you better be a truly special pass rusher. Yes. He's a below average pass rusher right now.
Especially when you talk about the modern NFL teams that are quite happy to run on 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, because they know they're going to go for it on 4th and 4, 4th and 3 anyway. Before we transition, Shane, into the Packers stuff, I will just say personally, I detest previewing games more than anything. I'm a film review guy, not a film preview guy. So I would say that basically all of my takes from this point, I watched a fair amount of Packers film. NFL Pro is a godsend for watching film. So I've gone pretty heavy into the Packers offense, less so the defense. I'm barely going to give any takes about how I expect the Eagles to play them, because I think predicting how teams play teams is one of the most difficult things in sports, because if you can see it, I guarantee you that every coach in the world who's analyzing film every week can also see it. So, for example, Packers play a lot of cover 3, and we're going to mention that. But I also think we're not going to go into huge detail about how the Eagles are going to beat single high coverage, because it's very possible the Packers come out and just play far less cover 3 this week because they've also watched the Eagles film. So I guess the way I'm going to look at this is I'm going to go through what I've seen from the Packers rather than go through what I expect the Eagles to do. I'll obviously mention the Eagles briefly, but I'm going to see this as more of like a Packers film review in my sense. And that way I can get out of here with my sanity and not get stressed about trying to predict things that I don't think I have the power to predict anyway. Does that make sense, Shane?
Yeah, so stay tuned.
Yes.
Everybody that's watching, stay tuned at the end of the show when I force a score prediction out of Jonny. And I make him tell me how he would game plan against the Packers.
Yes, yeah.
So
Johnny's game plan for the week. It's like everyone says the same thing. They got to run the ball early and they've got to throw to AJ Brown. I'm like, wow, this is hardcore analysis. Like when it's like Romo's 3 things for success. It's like block, catch, and score. I'm like, brilliant. Here's Tony. I don't think they had planned to do that beforehand. I will also just say, full disclosure, and I think you agree with me, Shane, I'm very impressed by the Packers film that I've watched. I think anyone that I think is talking themselves into this is an easy game because they've played some certain teams and they've lost in the division and they lost this week. And I think this is a good football team. In particular, a good offense. Defense maybe not so strong, but the Eagles' defense, and luckily Fangio normally is very good against Shanahan guys, and LaFleur is in that bucket. But I don't think this is like they score 7 points this week. I think they're going to get their wins. Yeah. Do you want to start with the Packers offense, Shane?
Yeah, this is like there's only 2 teams that I would least like to face in the first round of the playoffs, and they're both AFC teams. I would rather face anybody except the Chiefs and the Bills in the first round of the playoffs than the Packers. And it ends up being the Packers. And so that's unfortunate because I think the Packers are really, really good for some things that we'll start to get into. I also feel personally attacked for some of the things that I've prepared to bring into this podcast by Jonny's diatribe here. So I am going to tell you exactly what the Packers are going to do and how to beat it.
Third down, the Packers always play cover 3. The Eagles are going to run this cover 3 beater. And then the Packers realize that they always play cover 3 on third down. And the Eagles always run this play, but they don't do it. And the analysts go, what? I basically just think sports is incredibly hard to predict. All you can do is you can look at what both teams do and you can try. I mean, obviously something's easy. If your left edge rusher is unbelievable and their right tackle is crap, then it's quite easy to go, do you know what? The left edge rusher might do quite well this week. But in terms of like schematic like things I think the Eagles are going to do, if me and you can sit on a podcast, Shane, and say the Eagles are going to do this, it's probably a concern because that means you can bet that the Packers defensive staff know exactly what they're going to do. It's much more about timing things up. It's much more about the sequence of the game, the flow of the game, when you think they're going to call X coverage. And quite often coaches will change it up, especially in a playoff game, because there's so much film on these guys already out there, which is why I would much rather, except for Shane, who's going to tell you exactly what's going to happen. So you actually haven't got to watch the game. But I will talk more about what I've seen from the Packers film. Right, let's do it. Let's stop waffling. Let's go.
All right. I admittedly have a lot more on the Packers defense than I do the offense, but
that's very good because I'm the other way around. So that will be very helpful.
I think through everything from a lens of the Eagles offense. That's why I do a pass game review. Like I enjoy watching the Eagles offense more than their defense. And so I learned this week that that's flipped when I'm getting ready for another team. I want to know what they're going to do defensively, but we'll start with their offense. And those of you that are watching, I'll tweet this later for those of you listening, but I put together a chart of just the percentile ranks of Jordan Love and Jalen Hurts because, you know, any game you want to compare, you can always start at the quarterbacks, and that's a good place to start. And what percentile they rank in, in different metrics. And the biggest thing that jumps out to you watching Jordan Love is he is fantastic at avoiding sacks. And Jalen Hurts is not. Jordan Love is 97th percentile in the NFL in pressure to sack ratio. And so that's a measure of how many times that you were pressured did it convert into a sack. And almost nobody in the league avoids sacks in pressure situations better than Jordan Love. He is very rarely going to put them behind the sticks taking a sack. He's 95th percentile in sack rate compared to Hurts, who is 29th percentile in pressure to sack rate, 14th percentile in sack rate. And so the Eagles have not been great at rushing the passer this year. Obviously, you've gotten good production up the middle out of Milton Williams and out of Jalen Carter, and you expect them to affect the game. I don't expect them to get a lot of sacks in this game. Love's just too good at avoiding those sacks. I would consider that one of his superpowers. And so that was one of the biggest things that jumped out to me. Just watching Jordan Love and how the offense operates is he's just not going to put you behind the sticks.
Yeah, I've got more like generic takes on the offense rather than individuals, I'd say. So I'll save them when you get the numbers up. In watching Love, I think he's a little bit erratic, and I think it's interesting looking at the numbers at the bottom there of the completion percentage above expectation. Hurts is way out ahead in Love, although for everyone watching, Shane butchered it because he put Eagles quarterback 2 on the graph. So sadly, it's hard to really make a comparison. I don't know why we're looking at the backup Shane, but anyway. The other thing is obviously the rush EPA, like Hurts is significantly above him there. So yeah, it's his ability to create, we spoke about out of structure earlier on, is really, really, really good. I think he's a little bit more erratic. I think pressure does impact him, although he avoids sacks. I think he does have a fair few misses. And I'll talk more about schematic stuff later on. I'll give just a little bit big picture about the receiving core as well. The receiving core is really weird. There was a comment earlier on, and I said we'd get to it, about losing Christian Watson. Is it a loss? Yeah, it's a loss. I know you can say that the Eagles are good at taking away deep shots. I would say that as well, but you know what? They weren't the last 2 weeks of the season, Mike. They weren't against Washington week 16 or whatever. They've given up a few big plays of late. Both Slay and Quinion Mitchell have. So they could have missed Watson. Watson is not just a really good deep threat, by the way. He's a hell of a run blocker. He's a big guy. And he's one of those guys that can take a short pass to the house as well. They have a very, very strange receiving core. Jayden Reed is unbelievable with certain things. So I tweeted this to the Discord. So if you're not on the Patreon, why are you not? Because you would get more stats when I occasionally look them up. On deep throws this year, he has had 15 targets. And this is where I did a sense of the podcast where I had the stat up in front of me and now I can't find it. So I'm frantically scrolling. Here we go. 15 targets, 12 receptions, 478 yards. On outside left deep throws, he is 7 of 8 for a 272 yards. Like, what on earth is that? That is the most efficient receiving, like, deep numbers I've ever seen in my life. And he's also a threat to run. So they run a lot of wide receiver, like jet sweeps. They run a lot of like post wheel, deep crosses. They killed the Eagles at week 1. They test your ability to communicate and distribute routes down the field. However, the receiving core, Shane, is very hit and miss. Jayden Reed has 10 drops this year. Wicks has 8 drops this year. You lose Christian Watson, who's pretty steady. They're very, very up and down. They're not really a scary receiving core, but they're like, Jayden Reed is the one. With Jayden Reed and Christian Watson, you have 2 that could take the top off. Now you've really got 1. Tucker Kraft is a threat, and he's a very good player. I'm not terrified of their receiving core. I think Slay and Quinion should be in a good position, but I do think it's a very strong passing game. Mainly, though, it's like similar to the Eagles. It's a very good passing game because of how good the running game is. And I'll get into that more later on. But this is a team that is built run first, like the Eagles, and it's their running game that sort of allows their passing game to thrive. But yeah, big picture, I think Jordan Love is a little bit more erratic than the Packers would hope this year. You can definitely catch him out. You can definitely get a few interceptions in this one. He will miss a few high, and the Packers will drop a couple. But when it works, it's a really, really pretty sight because they can be a very explosive offense and they can score very, very quickly.
Yeah. One other note on Jordan Love is that when you think about how do you want to play against Jordan Love, I looked up the Jordan Love success rate against man coverage and against zone coverage. Let's play a game, Jonny. You love games. You love guessing games. Where do you think Jordan Love ranks in success rate against man coverage?
I would guess that he is lower, purely based on the receiving core and Matt LaFleur, but I may be completely wrong. So I don't know. Middle of the range, 18 to 22, slightly lower.
He is 28th in success rate against man coverage, 36.6%. Against zone coverage, he ranks 3rd with a 56%
and that doesn't surprise me
success rate.
Because that basically suggests what I've mentioned about receiving core being erratic and schematically being very, very good. A little bit of a concern for the Eagles, who don't really play that way. Really.
Which is another one of the things I've talked about. It's not just that I respect the Packers a lot. I think they're a really good team. I do think schematically they are a bad matchup for the Eagles in some of the things that you can do to exploit them, and some of the things they will do as well. I think it's a tough matchup. So I expect the Eagles to win. I think the Eagles are really good, but this is a tough matchup that the Eagles drew.
Yeah, there's a good comment from Toilet Paper saying, "I could change your name, man. I can't keep saying a good comment from Toilet Paper on this podcast. I've been saying every single time I say it. I think he's doing it deliberately now because it's just it gets me every single time. I'm going to call him TP. The scary thing with Love is he can throw for 400 or 150, and that is bang on. He is erratic, and there's an argument, though, that I'd rather play like the steady quarterback. Because in the playoffs, it just takes one really good game. Jordan Love is absolutely capable of like an elite performance. Like the talent is pretty absurd. I came away really, really impressed, even though he's very hit or miss because he's still young. I came away thinking that he's got like top 5 potential. He's a very, very, very talented QB. However, as I said, it's not humming on all cylinders the passing game this year. It really, really isn't. Right. Any other stats? I know you've got loads of stats. So yeah, you explain the stats, and then I'll explain what I saw from the film when I watched a little bit more of their offense.
Yeah, I've got their tendency charts and success rates from Sports Info Solutions. Charting is up on the screen now. Offensively, they run a really RPO motion heavy offense. They are going to use motion a lot to open up the run game in the way that we talked about the Eagles doing it with Kellen Moore when we talked about what the Kellen Moore offense was in the preseason. It never really manifested itself that way, but a lot of motion from receivers across formations to stretch your defense horizontally, and then you snap into outside zone going the other way, or you hand it to Jaden Reed running around the edge. So there's going to be a lot of misdirection. There's going to be a lot of pressure on the linebacking core to sort those things out up front and then to tackle well in space. And then off of that, they're also going to run a lot of play action, a lot of boot action with Jordan Love to get him on the move. They are pretty predominantly an 11 personnel team, but they'll put a second tight end on the field. But the biggest thing to me, and it feels like such a throwback, but you want to stop the run game, especially with Christian Watson down and especially with these wide receivers. This is a game where I would like to see a little more stacking of the box. Of course, this is like totally counter to everything the Eagles do because the Eagles don't play man coverage. They play light boxes. This is a game where I would like to see Vic Fangio throw a bit of a curveball because I think it would take a lot of the wind out of the sails of the Packers offense.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles don't stack the box, but I know what you mean. To me, stack the box is like 5-man fronts with the Eagles. Numbers that jump out, which don't surprise me based on the film. RPOs ranking second. I knew it was going to be high. I didn't know it'd be that high. Motion ranking fourth. Screen passes, third highest in the league. They run a ton of screens. And that all goes hand in hand. Basically, what the Packers want to do is they want to run first. They want to get you coming downhill quickly. Then they want to use motion. And it won't just be motion. It'll be like a jet motion, but then they'll run jet sweeps as well. They'll try and get you to come downhill. They'll try and get you looking a certain way, and they'll try and sort of throw it in the other direction. Can I go on a little bit of a tangent about the run game, Shane, if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Seeing as I'm a run game guy. I loved, those of you who know how much I enjoy watching run game. So I had a very nice evening yesterday, Monday night even. I finished up the Giants game, and then I had about an hour in the evening, and I sat there. I went on NFL Pro. I went on Filter. I went Packers, explosive runs, play. And it was like, for me, it's cinema. Watching a great run game, going to work. There was like 50 plays or something, just one after the other. I was like, oh, this is fun. I took a few clips, but I was just soaking in the Packers run game. It's good. Now, obviously, when I watch it like that, I'm not seeing how they tie it to the pass game, but they do a bit of everything. They can run your standard outside zone from under center if they want. They do quite a lot of 21 personnel as well, and I'm surprised they're actually not as high on your numbers with 21 personnel. So my guess is they run a lot of like a wide receiver in the backfield rather than just they're in 21 personnel, but they'll have a lot of 2-back sets, even if I'm counting a wide receiver in the backfield. Basically, the majority of their running plays have like backside screens attached. So there's a hell of a lot of RPOs. There's a lot of motion. There's a lot of shifts. They love pulling a guard. You will see a tight end or a guard come across the formation. You will see like a wide receiver come across one way and then come back the other way and be used on a split zone. Josh Jacobs is awesome. Like I was shocked when they got rid of Aaron Jones and signed Josh Jacobs because I thought Jones was a really good fit for them. Jacobs is different ball game. I could say something controversial here, Shane. Maybe I think you could argue Jacobs is the second best back in the league after Barkley, and I really do rate him. When I watched him, some of his broken tackles, his vision's excellent. If you don't tackle him early on, the Eagles secondary is not the best tackling unit. He will break explosive runs. If they do not get him down in the linebackers or the defensive linemen, he gets to Quinion Mitchell, he gets to Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, Darius Slay. He will run past them because he's a strong guy who can make you miss. But if you do get a hand on him, he'll sort of blow past you as well. It's a really, really fun run game to watch. As I said, there's zone, there's a gap scheme. They run a little bit of shotgun. They also run under center. You see them in the pistol. There's almost nothing they can't do. They run quite a lot to the right. A lot of their explosive runs came to the right. Whether that's something to note as well of who the Eagles' edge is on that side. I just felt it was a very, very enjoyable run game. And the run game is the thing. Like the run game and the pass game, they're married together. A lot of their passing concepts come off of their running game. So a lot of the screen passes and stuff, they come when you stack the box. They try and hit you outside quickly. They try and get you looking one way. It's not a gimmicky offense, but at times it feels a little gimmicky because the amount of stuff that's going on. But it's a gimmicky offense with really talented guys, a talented offensive line, and a very, very good running back. So I think it's pretty basic. I'm going to do the Tony Romo thing of what the Eagles have got to do this game is stop the run. Very, very basic, but it feels like if you take away the running game, I would actually argue there's a good comment coming in saying that I'm saying this game may be a case of who restricts the opposition run game best from Kajela. I think I agree. I basically am saying that. I would actually maybe argue that the Eagles drop back passing game is better. I think if this game, like if you could tell me neither team can run and you've both got to throw the ball, I weirdly think the Eagles pass game is more of its own thing. It's more of a standard drop back game. I think the Packers passing game is more tied to their run game. I think you take away a lot of the play action stuff, a lot of the RPO stuff. I think the Eagles will be more comfortable dropping back and letting AJ Brown and Devontae Smith go to work. So it's a very long way of saying that I really enjoyed watching the Packers offense, as people listening to me can probably tell. And I think Josh Jacobs is better than I realized, and I can see why they spent money on him. He was definitely the free agent signing that works. I think it's definitely Jacobs, Henry, and Barkley, obviously, that all left in the same year. So, yeah, you can count me a little bit concerned about the running game this week. Good news is, though, the Eagles' defense has been exceptional against the run. I do wonder how much the Packers are going to watch that Falcons game week 2 and test the Eagles with some outside zone, see if they can get Jordan Davis running laterally, see if they can try and cut off Zach Bourne like the Falcons did earlier on. But I normally think that the Eagles' defense of late has been pretty stout against the run. They'll be tested. They'll be tested as much as they've been in a while.
Yeah, I really like what you said about if both run games were shut down, that's probably an advantage Eagles, because so much of what the Packers do is tied to their play action. And if you're not having to be concerned about the run anymore because you shut that down, I do think it loses some of its luster, and it's not manipulating your second level as much. Whereas the Eagles, let's be honest, the Eagles just drop back and run mesh or throw it outside the numbers. There's not as much tying that all together. So that's not ideal, but it is ideal if you get into a game where nobody can run the football. So hopefully, if we had to sacrifice our run game to the football gods to say the Packers can't run either, I would take that deal. So is there anything else that you wanted to throw out on the Packers offense before we get into some of the defensive things?
Yeah, I'm literally just looking at my notes. I thought their pass protection was good when I watched them. I don't think the Eagles' edges are going to have a lot of success, especially against the Packers' right tackle. I think the Eagles' defensive tackles will have to play well. Jordan Love, as we mentioned, going down the field, average of 8.2 yards per attempt. A lot of that is Jaden Reed going down the field, but when they throw, they do like to attack vertically. I'm looking at other comments that I've got here. They love a bunch of vertical crossing routes. They killed the Eagles week 1 with it. So a lot of post will. They're going to really test the Eagles' route distribution in the secondary. There's going to be a lot of passing receivers off to one another. They're going to really, really test the Eagles' communication, which this year, the last 10 weeks, has been exceptional. But they have had some issues distributing routes, especially against Washington. And I imagine Matt LaFleur is going to watch that game, and I bet we see some similar concepts. The only bit of a random note, when I was watching some of their incompletions, I watched quite a few of their incompletions of late. The receivers can definitely struggle with the line of scrimmage. None of them are particularly big guys. I think Wicks, Reed, and Romeo Doubs can all be attacked at the line of scrimmage. The Eagles don't really press a lot, but I think Quinion Mitchell has been better when he's been up at the line of scrimmage, and there could be an argument here for running some sort of quarter half coverage and letting Quinion Mitchell play to the half side and pressing early. I think I would rather hit Jaden Reed early rather than let him get into a rhythm. But the issue you've got is he plays in the slot about 75% of the time, and he's in motion a lot, so he's quite hard to hit at the line of scrimmage. But Cooper DeJean is really good at knocking receivers off of their routes from the slot. So I think he's going to be tasked to try and hit Jaden Reed early, because once Reed gets going, he is fast. And yeah, he can charge you a bit. That's pretty much all I've got on the Packers offensive film.
It's funny you mentioned playing quarter half, because one of the stats that I dug up that I dropped for our Discord members yesterday was that the Packers are particularly bad against quarter half. They have negative 0.172 EPA against per play against quarter half, which ranks 30th in the league. The Eagles also happen to play quarter half at the highest rate in the NFL at 17.7%. So now the Packers have also faced that coverage significantly less than anybody else. So it is a small sample size, but I do think that's something that you could do. Especially like you mentioned, getting up and pressing in some instances, knowing you've got that safety over the top to help.
Yeah, I think as well, Shane, Christian Watson not being there, he's the hardest to press just because of his length and because of what he can do vertically. Quinion Mitchell did very well against Watson week one, down the field a couple of times, but Watson is a miss. Watson, he's a bit of he sums up their receiving core, Watson. He's erratic. He's either exceptional or he's nothing. Like anyone who plays fantasy, I was a Jaden Reed owner this year, and you were like, oh, he's brilliant. Oh, he's terrible. Oh, he's brilliant. Oh, he's terrible. They're very unpredictable as a passing game. Someone can go off. I did mention him, so I will just throw out there as well. Tucker Kraft is good, because I liked Luke Musgrave coming out, and he was taken above Tucker Kraft, and basically there's no reason to put Musgrave on because Kraft is that good. So you got to watch out for him a little bit, but I sort of trust the Eagles linebackers and safeties in coverage on Titans these days. Yeah, that's me done.
All right, well, let's get into the Packers defense, and I'll overview some things here. The Packers defensively, they have the number 7 defense by DVOA. It's the second best defense by DVOA that the Eagles have faced this season, the Steelers being the number 1. If you go look at EPA, the Packers have the second best defense by success rate that the Eagles have faced. Their defense overall by success rate ranks 6th in the NFL. Sorry, by EPA, but by success rate, they rank 23rd in the NFL. And so they are a very turnover reliant team. 6th in EPA, 23rd in success rate. They have 31 takeovers. I don't know why I said takeovers. They have 31 takeaways, which ranks 4th in the NFL. And they've done this against good teams. I mean, they've played the Lions twice. They've played the Vikings twice. And that's part of why EPA loves them, because they've played such a difficult schedule. I'm all over the place. That's why DVOA loves them, not EPA. Anyways, they've played a tremendously difficult schedule. I'm scattered because we're looking at stats, not film, and it's thrown me off. But this is a good defense.
Man, Sean. You are the stats man. Don't put yourself down. You love a statistic.
I do.
You love a statistic.
This is a really good defense, but a lot of how good they are comes from hunting big plays, comes from generating tackles for loss, being aggressive in the run games, comes from Xavier McKinney, who has 8 interceptions this year, breaking on plays, and sometimes, to be honest, playing unsound defense to go try and generate turnovers. And that's one thing the Eagles have been really good at, after the bye, is avoiding turnovers. I think that's going to be key in this game, because that's what the Packers thrive on. You can march the ball down the field on them as long as you don't turn it over. And so they're going to try to generate a lot of turnovers in this game. And it'll be up to, they got Jalen Hurts in week 1, and he's played a lot better since then. So hopefully they're not able to get him this week.
Yeah, before I go into any film comments, Shane, I think, do you want to show up the Packers defensive numbers as well? Coverage numbers and stuff, just because I think it probably ties in a little bit of what I'm going to say. I've got less film on the Packers defense as well. So things that stand out immediately, again, we're not going to go into every comment. If you're not watching, just check it out after via Shane's Twitter or on YouTube for the show. The things that stand out sort of immediately is the very low rate of man coverage, which is a shame. And also the fact that they do not blitz, which is also a shame because the Eagles have been really, really good against the blitz this year. Again, preview podcast is funny. The Packers could decide, screw it, let's blitz a lot. The other thing is that they play a lot of one high shells. It's only 17th in the league, but a lot of teams live in a lot more two high shells these days than 50%. So they will give you chances if you want to go down the field. My overall takeaway, if you want, and I haven't watched the defense as much as the offense, I'll be honest. I watched some of their takeaways. I watched some of the big plays they gave up. And then I tried to watch a couple of just drives in a row. I thought they were very well coached and pretty well rounded, but nothing special. I think a really good offense can go after them. I think their numbers are good, and you have to give credit for the numbers are good, but I don't see a superstar. I think the safety, who's the guy that they signed that the Eagles
Xavier McKinney.
Yes, McKinney's good. Xavier McKinney's good. If you want a name to watch out for in the secondary, just watch where McKinney goes, because I would probably try and avoid him, especially when throwing the football. But then there wasn't really a lot else that really impressed me. They have I think 3 pass rushers with more than 20 hurries or something this year. I don't think any of their edge defenders are going to scare Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson. I think Rashawn Gary and Kenny Clark are good, but I don't see them as elite. I think they're a bunch of guys who play hard and play well. But I didn't come away thinking the Eagles are really, really going to struggle. I think just a little bit of an interesting film note as well was that when you look at some of their explosive plays they give up, there was quite a lot of middle of the field throws. So they didn't, yes. I think Goff in particular ruined them with how good Goff and Stafford are at those big routes. That's not something the Eagles do a lot, but I think they can do it, but we haven't seen it a great deal. If I was, which I hate doing, predicting what the Eagles might do, they might, I would imagine, guess what, Shane? They'll run the ball early, and they might try and get them as much single high as possible, and they might say, your cornerbacks are fine, but our receivers are better. Let's play some good old downfield buddy ball, and let's try and throw it when we get them in single high. Toilet paper commenting saying lots of Packers fans, or TP commenting, saying that lots of Packers fans are disappointed in Rashawn Gary. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. As I said, when you genuinely look at it, you look at if you look at the Eagles defense and you say talented, you'd say Jalen Carter, Zach Bourne, really high level players. You look at the Packers and I say Xavier McKinney, and then I have some good guys Kenny Clark, good player, Wyatt can play, but I don't see real standout superstars that I'm you need to avoid that guy. That guy could change the game. But they are very sound. They're a very sound defense. The Eagles aren't going to march down the field every time, but I didn't see a team that really, really scared me. I think if the Eagles are going to win this game, they will shock. They will have to score points, but I don't expect them to win a defensive struggle, because I expect them to play pretty well against this Packers defense. If they don't, I'd be a little bit disappointed.
Yeah, the Packers play a lot of 4-man fronts, and they play a lot of cover 3 behind that. And you mentioned a lot of the explosive plays coming off of play action, targeting the middle of the field. And I think that's it, because their linebackers play so aggressively in the run game, trying to generate those negative plays. That is opened up. That's just not what the Eagles do. The Eagles don't play that way. And so that's another one of those things where I'm it's just not the best matchup. It's what the Packers struggle with defensively, the Eagles just don't do offensively. And same thing if you flip it, what the Packers offense struggles with, the Eagles defense doesn't do a whole lot. And a little bit more about the Packers. We can talk, run game, because we talked earlier about whichever run game gets shut down, that's probably the difference in the game. And the Packers have a really good run defense. Rashawn Gary, who you mentioned earlier, is the highest ranked edge rusher in ESPN's run stop win rate metric. And defensive tackle TJ Slayton is first among defensive tackles in run stop win rate. And so this is a team that plays well against the run. And they have not allowed a 75-yard rusher in the last 10 weeks of the season. The Lions, one of the best running teams in the league, they held them under 4 yards per carry both times they played them. 3.9, and I think it was 3.3. So,
and doing that from a 4-man front is impressive. And I don't think their stack the box numbers are that high. As we said, they're pretty mixed. They're not like they're not Jim Schwartz style. They're always +1 in the box. Yeah, so holding the Lions under is good.
Stack the box at the 26th highest rate in the league. So they don't do it often. They've only allowed 3 100-yard rushers this season, and 2 of them were the first 2 weeks of the year, to Jonathan Taylor and, of course, to Saquon Barkley. And so this is a good run team. And so the Eagles are going to have to try to get Barkley going early in this one. I also have the Packers coverage tendencies I can throw up here on the screen.
Yeah, Shane, while you're throwing them up there, one final point I didn't mention as well was they've got a rookie safety who I like. I liked him coming out, and I should know his name before I make a point. It's not Bullard. Is it Bullard or Bullock?
Javon Bullard?
Yes, that's the one. I liked him coming out, but safety is a hard place to play as a rookie. And he gave up a touchdown in week 17 that you can watch on the explosive play. And he basically just seemed to get a little bit confused by what the Vikings were doing route combination wise. I think if the Eagles wanted to target someone, you can target him. The secondary definitely is prone to mistakes. Like, as I said, it's pretty well coached, but you can definitely take your lumps down the field. But you have to just be careful that you're going after him and not McKinney, because McKinney is far less likely to be fooled by any sort of play action or any sort of crossing combinations that you're trying to run.
Yeah. So I have the Packers coverage tendencies, their usage and their EPA allowed. They run their main defense is cover 3. 36.6% of their snaps are in cover 3, and then cover 2 on 21%, cover 1 on 18%, and it goes down from there. And so they're going to play a lot of single high, whether it be cover 3 zone or cover 1 man. They disguise their shell on 32% of their snaps, which is the 12th highest rate in the league. And they run pass game stunts on 29.2% of their pass rush reps, which is the 8th highest rate in the league. So they're going to do things to muddy the picture for Jalen Hurts. They're going to do things to muddy the protection for the offensive line. Those are things that are going to have to be sorted out. But you mentioned earlier, they don't blitz a lot. And that's true. When they do blitz, 36% of their blitzes are sim pressures, and then 51% are them just sending 5. They only send 6 on like 13% of their blitzes. And we've seen the Eagles deal well with sending 5. We've seen them have some trouble sorting out protections against sim pressures, but I don't expect the protection to be an issue for the Eagles. But what I do expect to be an issue perhaps is, we got into the Packers play a ton of zone, the 5th highest rate in the league. And I gave the stats for Jordan Love being 28th in success rate against man coverage and 3rd in success rate against zone coverage. Well, it's like flipped for Jalen Hurts. He is 2nd in success rate against man coverage at 53.8%. He's 26th in success rate against zone at 45.7%. And so if I'm the Packers, I would be doing a lot of what Washington did when they played the Eagles, where they played their cornerbacks off of the ball a lot, like playing off 10 yards, and just sit on those comeback routes, those curl routes, those out routes, and have safety help over the top. I thought that really gave the Eagles some difficulty against Washington earlier this year. I thought we would see teams start to do that more, but I think if you can take away, if you can get a safety down into the box and take away the run game, you can be plus in the run game, and you can sit on those outbreaking routes. You have to like your chances to slow down an Eagles offense that really doesn't want to attack a whole lot between the hash marks over the middle of the field. So I'm interested to see how the Packers defense approaches this Eagles offense. It's certainly difficult because, if we've talked about for so long, they have so many good skill players that it's just a question of who do you want to try to make beat you? And they can all do it. I'm interested to see which option the Packers choose.
Yeah, probably final thing I've got on the defense. I don't know if your numbers include like Tampa 2, which is a hard way of, I don't know if they would call it cover 2. on your coverage numbers, but they run quite a bit of Tampa 2, which is a coverage that has gone out of fashion because quite often it can be disastrous down the field. And they run it because McKinney can sort of drop into the hole very, very well. But quite a lot of their interceptions, I think they almost know they're susceptible in cover 3 to the middle of the field on those dig routes. So to sort of mix it up, they run that Tampa 2 so they can try and get that safety coming downhill and jumping on that dig route. So if the Eagles do try and attack it like that, you might see the Packers run some Tampa 2. And you mentioned the run defense. The last thing I'd say on that is the thing that impressed me was they were an aggressive run defense. And what I mean by that is they ran like a lot of slants at the line of scrimmage. It was, we talk about the Eagles where there's like a mentality of we're not accepting 5 yards of carry. We want you to lose yardage on 1st and 10. They have that sort of mentality. They will go after the Eagles run game. I don't think they'll be afraid. I think you'll see defensive linemen slanting. And as we know from the Eagles doing that, that means that they can be susceptible because if you pick the wrong gap and you manage to catch them out with some misdirection, you can be in trouble when you slant. And the Eagles have stopped slanting as much over the second half of the season, which has made their run defense better. But it's a pretty aggressive run defense. Again, I didn't come away amazingly impressed, but I thought they were a very solid unit. That is how I would sum up the defense to finish. That's pretty much all the film points I had. So unless you've got any particular stats things you wanted to throw out, that's pretty much me finished on what I've seen. I'm going to watch more for what it's worth. So obviously that will not be on the podcast, but if you join the Patreon and you're in the Discord, because I basically is how I communicate, I will probably post a few other thoughts on anything else I watch in the defense over the second half of the week.
Yeah, I think that's about it. Just one thing that I just jumped out at me when I was looking at stats.
This is cool.
DVOA breaks down like each individual skill position player's DVOA, which I actually have that. Jordan Love ranks 4th among quarterbacks. Jalen Hurts ranks 16th. Jaden Reed ranks 2nd among receivers. AJ Brown is 3rd. Devontae Smith is 10th, and Romeo Doubs is 13th. Saquon Barkley is 7th among running backs. Josh Jacobs is 8th. And then Tucker Kraft is 3rd among tight ends. Dallas Goedert is 24th. But they also break down like defensively how much DVOA you surrender by opposing skill position group. And one thing that really jumped out at me is, the Packers are like you would expect. Negative 6.9% to wide receiver 1s, negative 6.5% to wide receiver 2s. It's like the same. The Eagles surrender positive 7.3% to wide receiver 1s and negative 39.5% to wide receiver 2s. Your wide receiver 2 is going to have a tremendously rough day against the Eagles. And I would assume that's because wide receiver 2s ended up aligned to Quinyon Mitchell's side a lot of the season. And he really shut guys down. But the other thing that really sticks out is the Packers have Tucker Kraft, who's extraordinarily talented at tight end. And the Eagles have the 3rd best defense when it comes to shutting down opposing tight ends, which is something we've never had in the past. It feels like it's been an Achilles heel for the Eagles defense for forever. And spoiler alert, that's what competent linebacker play does. So watching Tucker Kraft against like Zach Bond in the passing game is going to be also an interesting matchup.
Yeah, probably the last one I mentioned there as well was that the Packers struggle against tight ends. And again, DVOA is an interesting metric, so I wouldn't take this as gospel, which is why I try and dig into the film. But the stats are always very useful to sort of give you an idea of where to look. So I am going to look at some tight ends against the Packers probably tomorrow night because that number is not great considering they're quite a good defense. So I'm interested to see who they played and how teams have got after them because I imagine the Eagles will definitely be watching that film, and Dallas Goedert coming back could be the right time because it feels like the Eagles are going to need a performance from him.
Yeah, it's good to get him back for this game. Glad this is the game that he'll be healthy for. Maybe it is good they play the Packers in the first round instead of like the second round when he's hurt again or something.
Yeah, maybe. Right, that's me out. That's me done, Shane. Preview in the books.
Wait, you didn't give us your score prediction.
Do you actually want a score prediction?
No,
Do you actually want a score prediction? Should we go for a score prediction just for the hot takes, just to get the tweets out there? I don't really care about score predictions. Do you think the Eagles will win? First of all?
Yes. I think it'll be a close game, though.
I think it'll be close. I'm going for like it's a weird one because I feel like the Eagles, I say it's going to be close, but then I feel like the Eagles should be pretty successful on offense, and I think their defense will do okay. So maybe like 24-21 But maybe one of those 24-21s where like the Eagles have the ball late and they could score again if they needed, but they're running out the clock. Like one of those 6-minute drives. So it could end up like, it might look like a 30-21 game because they could have scored again, but they didn't. But yeah, they're a good team. Like, it's a really good offense. It's a really fun offense. And Jerry Levy's guys working hard this week. I'm glad they're playing on Sunday. I'm glad it's a game that I can watch live, which is cool. So I'll be tweeting and hanging out with Discord live and just staying up late Sunday. It must admit, losing a playoff game when it ends at 1 o'clock in the morning and you have to go up at work at 6 is possibly the worst experience as a UK Eagles fan. So purely for my mental well-being, if the Eagles could win, that would be fantastic because it will end about 1 a.m. here. So 1 a.m. off a loss is rough. Let me tell you, it's rough.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question and then we'll get out of here. Assuming the Eagles win, who would you rather see in the divisional round? So the options are, if Washington beats Tampa Bay, then Washington would go to Detroit and the Eagles would get the winner of the Vikings and the Rams, which the Vikings and Rams play on Monday Night Football. So they would be at a rest disadvantage compared to the Eagles. So would you rather play Vikings or Rams on a 1-day rest advantage, or would you rather play Tampa Bay?
So it could never be Washington, though. It couldn't be Washington.
Yeah, it can't be Washington. They win, they'll be the lowest seed
There's
remaining.
just, like, the obvious answer is I don't want to play the Vikings. Sam Darnold, man, I don't know. I think QB sample sizes are a real thing. Not to go back to the McKee thing, but like QBs don't dramatically change. They get better, but they don't completely shift. The Bucs scare the life out of me because Baker Mayfield's just like one of those nut jobs that when he gets in a groove, he seems like he can make every throw in the book. But I guess I'd have to say Vikings still at the top. Then it would probably be Tampa Bay and then the Rams. As in, I'd rather play the Rams out of everyone.
Yeah.
I just don't think the Rams are as talented, simply put. But you know what? It's not close between Tampa Bay and Vikings. It's pretty close. I wish they were playing Washington this week. I'll be honest. I wanted that game. I really wanted to see Washington come back here. I would have much rather them than the Packers personally. But there you go. Beggars can't be choosers.
I weirdly think outside of the Eagles, there's only two teams I think can beat the Lions in the NFC outside the Eagles. One of them's Green Bay. I think Green Bay could beat the Lions. The other one's weirdly the Commanders. I don't think Tampa can beat them. I don't think the Rams can. The Vikings, they dominated the Vikings, and I think that I don't think the Vikings can beat them. But the Commanders, like, they're not as good as the Lions. Don't get me wrong, but Jaden Daniels, I could just see him going, rushing for 140 yards and just having a crazy game. So I think I'm pulling for. I don't know. On one hand, I would love for the Commanders to not win a playoff game. So all the Commanders fans that were talking trash after they cheap shotted Jalen Hurts out of a game to win, they don't get to experience a playoff win. On the other hand, it would be a little nice to like throw that in the face of Cowboys fans through all off season. It's like, well, at least the Commanders can win a playoff game when they get there. But I do think Washington win gives the Eagles the best chance, I think, for someone else to knock off Detroit. And I would be hoping you get the Rams instead of the Vikings out of that scenario.
Yeah, fair enough. But that's assuming, Shane, that Jordan Love doesn't go nuts and makes like 4 ridiculous throws in the fourth quarter to Jalen Reed. The Eagles are a better team. Like, they are a better team, and they're at home, and they'll be feeling it. But it's going to be a proper game. I'm looking forward to it. It'll be a really good game, I think. Yeah,
the Eagles are the better team. The better team doesn't always win. And also a 20-point fourth quarter lead against the Packers is not safe. So hopefully the Eagles are able to just continue to pour it on. I am already feeling stressed about this game because this is the matchup I didn't want in the first round. So hopefully next week, hopefully next week we're previewing a second round game, but I don't want to do the preview thing yet. You guys let us know. Let us know on Twitter, in the Discord. We can try to do a little bit of preview, assuming the Eagles have another game, but we definitely want to get into film review next week regardless.
Yes.
So
yeah, I think the majority will be film review based, and then maybe a smaller bit than it was today anyway, previewing the stuff. I always think it's more important what you do as well, by the way. Just philosophically, I always think it's more important that you do what you need to do as a team rather than you adjust the offense the team you're playing against. I think for the team like the Eagles that will probably have more talent than most teams, it's much more about them executing than it is the other team like stopping them, because I think the Eagles are pretty much going to be more talented than possibly everyone they play. Is it fair to say this roster, especially on offensive line, Barkley, AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, is more about them playing their game well than it is the other team sort of stopping us?
Yeah, I agree. You can also tell how we are with preview shows because this is the shortest episode of On the Shane page, excluding your solo show, I think, of the season. And it was both a recap and a preview show. And we still spent like 25 minutes on the recap part. So that is going to do it, though. Thank you guys for joining in for this episode of On the Shane page. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at ShaneHalfNFL. He's at JohnnyPage9. Be sure you go check out our Patreon at patreon.com/ontheshanepage. We have a $3 a month and a $5 a month tier. The $3 a month tier gets you access to an ad-free version of this podcast. The coolest perk is our Discord, where we just get in and chat. We talk a lot more there than we do on Twitter these days. So come hang out with us there. We're running like a football simulation league in there that we're in the process of drafting, and a lot of cool stuff going on there. You get monthly mailbag episodes and some other things. And then in the $5 a month tier, you also get my weekly All 22 film review. So if you want to find out more about Tanner McKee, I put up a 30-minute pass game review, and you can go get a free 1-week trial. I think I'm biased. I think it's worth the value. If you try it out for a week and don't like it, you can go cancel, and it doesn't cost you anything. We're also going to be doing a jersey giveaway at the end of January to someone in our $5 a month tier. So go check all of that stuff out. And as always, please rate and review the show on the Eagle Pinpool Network. Help us get it out there to more people as well. So we will get out of here. We will catch you guys next week for another episode of On the Shane page.